I guess I'll introduce myself. I am Wendy Simpson, aka W.A. Simpson. I wrote Tinderbox, which is a high fantasy, and it is available for pre-order now almost everywhere. But its official release date will be August 16th of this year. So in a little under a month.
Which is exciting.
Yeah, yes, it is.
I'm Shameez Patel Papathanasiou. I'm the author of The Last Feather, which was published on the 19th of July.
Mm-hmm.
So we're almost a week into publication on my
Oh,
side.
congratulations. That is exciting. And I'm glad I've got my copy. So it's very exciting, especially how you've got the first and then the reborns, and how when somebody like dies or gets called, they go from the real world to ours, and they have powers, and you have these different kind of subsets. I'm really loving it so far.
I'm so pleased to hear. I've been reading Tinderbox as well, and I'm already so deeply in love with Bram.
Oh.
And my heartstrings get pulled every time he and Seth interact. And if anything happens to any of them, I will come and find you to give you a word about it. Oh, they're so precious.
You just make sure Kala is saved, okay?
Okay. We've got a deal. Let's see how it goes. Like you mentioned, mine starts off in the real world, so I didn't have to join the inspiration on for that. But the idea that there is something else, something magical, being a fantasy fan growing up, that is the mindset that most big fantasy fans have here, is what would a world be like with magic, and how would we get there if it existed? So I toyed around with this idea, if it was a regular person entering a fantasy world. And that's where the Celine realm came from, essentially.
Well, with me, I'm sure you're familiar with the original story of the Tinderbox by Hans Christian Andersen. It started with a question, like, okay, so he killed the old witch, and then he went about his business and became a king. What happened afterwards? The story just kind of ends. Okay, he's a king, the queen is fine with it, and that's it. So the world itself is sort of like a mixing of our world back when Hans Christian Andersen was alive, and a lot of his stories and a lot of the other old stories take place there. Like, I'm going to try not to spoil it for you. When Isbeth and the old witch were first talking, Isbeth was naming all of these items that the king might want to get his hands on. I don't want to say one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet. I should have had my own book up to look at it, but well, I'll use the celestial vine. Okay. Obviously, you know what that is. It's from Jack and the Beanstalk, and it talks about the farm boy who felled the vine. When the vine fell, that's how the ribbon aisles were made. And then you've got all these other stories that are interspersed with Tinderbox. I'm going to try to put as much of Hans Christian Andersen as I can in here, because I really love the guy. Seriously, I love his stories. But yeah, that's what inspired me to make that world. And
just an offhand question, sort of jumping on that. Where did you get your inspiration for names? Because I was quite enjoying the names that you used for your characters.
Names, I just pick what I like. I mean, I'm not one of those people who has a fantasy name and it has 20 syllables in it, or you need, and lots of apostrophes, or you need a pronunciation guide to find out what the names are. And no offense, I'm not dissing anybody who does do that, but I just like simple, classic, simplistic names. And for Isbeth, I was looking for an actual witch name, and I chose Morrigan at first, but there are a lot of books with witches named Morrigan. So I said, let me see.
I love the name Misfit.
Yeah, thank you. And let me see what else I can find out there. It was the same with Graham. That's just a name I've always loved. So I know it's supposed to be short for Abraham, but he is just plain old-fashioned Graham.
And it suits
So,
his personality. Well,
hmm,
what I know of him so far, I think it
uh-huh.
suits him very well.
I should know this by heart. What's happening in chapter 7? But I'm gonna have
But
to bring the
it's
book
okay.
up.
I don't want to spoil it for the listeners either.
Well, you know what? That is a very good question because I was wondering what is the difference between high fantasy and soft fantasy? I'm assuming with high fantasy because it's straight magic and you've got all of the magical elements, the magical characters, whereas in The Last Feather, it's got a part of our world in it. Yeah, sound like the Little Mermaid. And you go to the other world too. Am I correct? Is that what the differences are?
So I did a bit of research when I was pitching the book or when I was about to pitch it because I needed to figure out how to classify it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And what I understood was that urban fantasy is magic that sort of takes place on Earth, and then high fantasy is anything where a magical world is created. So technically, very
Mm-hmm.
technically speaking, The Last Feather is also high fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
But as somebody who has read high fantasy, it still didn't feel like it should be part of that genre
Mm-hmm.
because to me, it felt like what I call the soft fantasy. And I saw that that term is getting picked up, but um, it's not an actual recognized genre.
Mm-hmm.
More, I think, a feeling that some people get when reading certain fantasy books, where it's written in a very soft tone, a very colloquial tone,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not so much to do with whether it started in our world and ended up in a magic world, but more that it's written in what I would call
Yeah.
a modern or contemporary voice.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas hand fantasy, high fantasy, high fantasy has an air about it where you
Mm-hmm.
know from the minute you start reading that it is big, it is epic,
Mm-hmm.
and I love both genres. And I'm a mood reader. So sometimes I'm in the mood for something big and epic, and sometimes I'm in the mood for magic, but I want it to be soft and easy, where
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to focus too hard. And I think that for me is the difference between
Yeah.
high
No,
fantasy and
that
soft
that
fantasy.
makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah, somebody once tried to tell me that Tinderbox was epic fantasy, and I was
I
like,
would say it is. It is
really? You think
actually. And in a sense, I know sometimes they, again, part of this incessant amount of research that I did because I'm
so?
obsessive in my nature,
Mm-hmm.
um, that sometimes they reserve the epics for the long books. So
Yeah.
for me, the genre, I would call it an epic in a sense that it is such a big world that you've created
Oh.
with a magic system involved,
Mm-hmm.
and there are different cultures, and just from where I was reading, they just got to, without being too much of a spoiler for the listeners, they've just got to Bram's hometown, which is obviously being run. I won't say anything, but it gets run in a different way to some of the other towns.
Yeah.
So you've created what I would call an epic new world, but
Oh.
I know some people sort of reserve the term epic for the really long books, like actual
Yeah.
page number length, but I don't know. I would call it an epic.
Oh, okay. Like I was thinking like when somebody said that, I was like, it's not like Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, or what's the dude's name? Robert Jordan. Oh, I can't remember. I can't believe I
Well
cannot
of
remember.
time.
Yes. And I feel, well, that's what I consider epic. So I always thought that Tinderbox was just, it wasn't on such a very large scope, which is why I always thought it was high fantasy or heroic fantasy. That's another term that gets thrown around. But yeah, I see your point, definitely.
Well, Cassia's was very obvious from the very first page, of course.
Yeah.
She's pining for her best friend that went missing, and she had absolutely no closure about it because they never found a body. And at the same time, it gets mentioned that Kala, her younger sister, is in an incredible amount of pain, and no doctor seems to be able to figure out why. And so whether or not magic ever enters her life, her motivation, her life goal would be to fix her sister's problem. And it is Cassia in a nutshell. She lives for her family. She lives for others. So it was very easy to find her quest, to know that she would do everything that it takes to help not only Keller, but once she got to the Selene realm, to help Lucas in whichever way he needed.
And watch out for Lachlan. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, Lachlan. He's coming to stir some trouble.
Yeah, obviously. I won't ask if he's the main villain or not, so.
I won't say.
Well, with Tinderbox, and you know what? I am going to go ahead and get it here because, again, I don't want to spoil anything. And you said you were on 7?
I can tell you exactly where I'm on. If you just give me 1 second. 7, yes.
Oh, okay. I remember now. All righty. Well, Isbeth, she, of course, initially is looking for her grandmother's murderer. The old woman, she raised Isbeth, then she sent Isbeth off to train. And then when Isbeth comes back, this woman who has been a big part of her life is suddenly gone, and she doesn't know what's going on. So of course she is furious, which is why, if you remember the scene where she goes and talks to the town magistrate, and she's like, why did you just leave? Well, again, I'm trying not to spoil, but she was like, why did you do what you did? Why didn't you do anything? And that's when he tells her about how the soldier came and, he's in this kingdom, you're going to need to go there and see what's going on that end. And that is Isbeth's main goal, to just find and punish her grandmother's murderer and get the tinderbox back. But then she meets Bram, and that is kind of
so excited.
Because normally Isbeth, if you've noticed, she's real solitary. She just has Gamir, and that's all she needs. And then suddenly she runs into Bram, and she can't deny that Bram is a really good guy. So
no, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you, I'm only at chapter 7. I already love him. He's got my heart, and everyone has to protect him.
And I wanted to do the whole, because you know how they always say witches hate children. Well, Isbeth loves children. So
that's sweet.
So which is why she's so nice to Seth. And
well, I haven't seen that, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see, because she does have a very cold exterior. So it will be good to see how she interacts with.
How far on 7 did you get?
I've just first line. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's not actually a spoiler. It's something for me to look forward to.
Yeah. Okay. So I won't say anything more.
And
but yes.
And Bram it's obviously a multi POV, which I'm enjoying, or dual POV. I don't know if it goes any further than her and Bram. But his quest and motivations
is, of course, is to get his kingdom back. He feels, as I'm sure you've seen, an immense amount of guilt, because he feels it's my fault. I let myself get captured, and now all my people are subjugated to this, to Wilhelm, and he's trying to figure out a way, how can I get my kingdom back without causing any further damage? And he just wants to go home, basically. Yeah, because I mean, he's in this foreign land. He knows he's a prisoner. He's still got his family, and he's just I just want to get out of here. That's all. You know how if you're at a place and you're not enjoying yourself and you want to leave, but you can't, and you're like, I just want to go home, And
he's good. He gives off a feel of goodness, which does remind me of Lucas in a sense, where they've got such good intentions and they're trying their best, but the odds are against them all the
But they're
time.
not sure what to do. Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't give up. It may take a while, and you're gonna get rejections. Okay, I'm sorry. That's just the facts. Research. Oh, please do a lot of research. Research everything, the genres, read a lot, research agents, research publishers, because you do not want to get caught up in something like I did a long time ago. And I remember one time I actually said that this mother, her daughter wanted to be a writer. I told the mother, I said, okay, tell her never give up, tell her research everything. Now, she's going to get rejected. And the moment I said that, 5 mothers gathered around and just started like chewing my head off. And I didn't say anything. And then I said, I'm never going to do that again. But, you have to know it's going to happen. I mean, Tinderbox was rejected. Was The Last Feather, or was your first time?
No, I with The Last Feather, I'd actually written something just before The Last Feather, and that got
Mhm.
rejected. And
Yeah, okay.
I learned from that experience and
Yes.
started submitting The Last Feather, and I
Mhm.
submitted it simultaneously, as most authors do. Flame
Mhm.
Tree was one of the submissions,
Mhm.
and they got back to me so quickly that I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure everyone else didn't get a chance to reject me.
I did too. I've been at this for a long time, and really, Tinderbox, it's a really old story. It's something that I wrote like several years ago, and this was before I was aware of Flame Tree Press. I was sending it out, and it was getting rejected, and finally, I was like, okay, well, no, I'm not even. I'm going to just set it aside for a little while, and then I wrote another one called Gunslinger Witch, and I sent that out for a little while. This is right when I got accepted by Ann Tibbetts. And we ended up putting that aside. And she said, do you have anything else? And I said, well, I have Tinderbox. So, so I redid Tinderbox, did some editing, gave that to her, and boom, Flame Tree Press was the ones who decided. They're fantastic, aren't they?
Yes, at the second, because
Absolutely
as I
love
said,
them.
I did
Mm-hmm.
have, if I think I sent it out in a batch of 10, so to
Mm-hmm.
10 places
Uh-huh.
simultaneously. And when Flame Tree came back to me, there was something about the first few sentences of Don's email, the
Mm-hmm.
editor, and
Mm-hmm.
I had a feeling based on what he was saying that he would be the right person to
Mm-hmm.
edit it.
Yeah.
And I spoke to my husband, we made a decision, I was sold,
Uh-huh.
and I withdrew all the other applications. I have no idea if they were gonna
Yeah.
accept or reject me, but I withdrew it and I was 100% happy with my choice.
Oh, good. See, me too. Absolutely. Yeah. So, we're giving props and bravo to Flame Tree Press. But yeah, but that's what you have to do. Write for yourself, don't give up, and then write for others. Don't give up. Realize there's going to be rejection, but you shouldn't let that deter you. Just keep going, and eventually it will happen.
To add on to that,
Mhm.
I would also say that with regards to the rejection, that reading, they always say reading is subjective, and it is.
Yes.
And something interesting that I've stumbled across
Mm-hmm.
is that you can love a book. It's 5 stars for you. And if you go onto their Goodreads page, somebody else would have given it a 1 star and hated every single thing that you loved about it.
Yeah.
And it is just the perfect example
Mm-hmm.
of how everyone's tastes are different. You just haven't found the right editor or publisher or agent,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to keep going until it lands in the right hands.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know it's really hard. Oh, one more thing. Don't read reviews. That's
Oh
what I
no.
say. Yeah, don't people reviews. I've always said this. Reviews are for readers. Now, if you're a reader too, fine, go ahead and do it. But don't read your own reviews. People, if there's a 5-star review, somebody will let you know. Like Sarah and Zoe, they'll tell me when there's a 5-star review, and I'll go ahead and I'll put it on my website. But I accidentally went on Goodreads one day and I saw that someone had given Tinderbox 3 stars, and I was like, ah, I clicked off of it real quick. I didn't actually see it. So yeah, because
And that's 3 stars, which isn't hateful.
I know it isn't hateful,
some reviewers
mm-hmm.
In their right, sometimes not, can take things quite personally and can obviously go down to 1 star. So at least it was a 3 star that you accidentally stumbled on.
But
just general advice that I give all of my writer friends is that you can't edit a blank page. I don't remember who said it, but it is such good advice, and I pass it on to anyone listening, because writer's block is real. I'm not arguing that, but you need to write. You need to write it, and you'll fix it later on. If it's not perfect, it's not going to be perfect. Your first draft is definitely not going to be perfect. And as soon as you accept that, it becomes a lot easier to write it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I want to just say good luck to everyone out there who wants to pursue a writing career. Keep it up. Please buy Tinderbox.
Yes, and The Last Feather.
Yes,
you'll have a lot of fun.
And The Last Feather, you will love them both. We guarantee.
And actually, just read them back to back. Zoe's doing it, and she's having a great time.
Yes, that's a good idea too. Well, it was very nice speaking with you. And this was
lovely. It was lovely speaking to you too. And I'm excited to continue with Isbeth and Bram's adventure.
Yes, Cass and Lucas too. Definitely.
Thank you.